My hands have always been steady. I took pride in that, a surgeon's precision, even though my tools were a simple datapad and stylus, not scalpels and clamps. It's ironic now, how my fingers tremble against the cool metal of the Xylari translation unit. I should be used to it after all these years, but fear has a way of finding the cracks in a carefully constructed facade. The Xylar conquered Earth a decade ago, arriving from some distant star system we'll never see. The first sign of their presence wasn't motherships descending upon cities, but a disruption. A scrambling of signals, garbled transmissions, global communication networks brought to their knees. They struck from within, collapsing civilization's nervous system before a shot was fired. We were a body paralyzed. Resistance was uncoordinated. Brave, perhaps, but ultimately futile and brief. Theirs was a victory of technology, of strategy, and an understanding of human systems we were only beginning to comprehend ourselves. For anyone with a knack for languages like me, it was a choice. Collaborate or vanish. Those were the whispered rumors anyway. I never wanted to find out if they were true. The Xylar don't look how you'd expect. Our science fiction fantasies were all wrong. No bulging eyes or rubbery skin. They are pure angles, living geometry. Their segmented bodies gleam iridescent in the light, all chitin and shard-like appendages. They communicate in clicks, chirps, and bizarre subsonic pulses that make the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. I became their translator, their conduit. It's a strange sort of intimacy to be the bridge between species that can never truly understand one another. The Xylar value efficiency above all else. Human language is messy, rife with idiom and ambiguity. It offends their sensibilities. My task is to render our rambling thoughts into the stark directives they favor. A thankless job. Every day another exercise in feeling my humanity chipped away. Yet there's comfort in routine, in order. I have a decent apartment, better rations than most, and as long as I do my job well, I am left alone. It's enough, I tell myself. It has to be. But lately something has shifted. I catch it in the coded conversations of the human laborers, in the way their shoulders stiffen when a Xylari overseer passes too close. I hesitate to name it, even in the privacy of my own mind. Is it hope? It's a dangerous thing, hope. Fragile, easily crushed, yet it persists, a stubborn ember refusing to be extinguished. Do I fan that spark, risking everything I've built, on the uncertain promise of a different future? Or do I grind it into dust, ensuring my survival at the cost of something far more precious? A Xylari technician, Clack 7, if my understanding of their naming conventions is correct, enters the room and nods brusquely at me. The segmented plates of its carapace shift with a click-clack sound that sets my teeth on edge. I clear my throat, mustering a semblance of professionalism. Translator Unit 412 reporting for duty, I say. It's ritual now, this stilted formality. I doubt the Xylar care for titles. Efficiency dictates streamlined interactions. My name, my history, those are irrelevant, only my function matters. Clack 7 issues a series of sharp chirps, a frequency that indicates task assignment, and the translation unit hums to life. The visual display projects a schematic, a sprawling industrial complex, rows of gleaming machinery, and swarms of human workers hunched over conveyor belts. It's a new facility, unfamiliar. Where is this? My voice comes out softer than intended, carrying a hint of the unease coiling in my gut. The Xylari regards me through multifaceted eyes, the black orbs unsettling in their blankness. Another series of clicks accompanied by a subtle tilt of one segmented antenna. Irrelevant data. Translator Unit 412 is tasked with inspection and output analysis. I bite back a retort. Argument serves no purpose. The Xylar value obedience, precision. Emotional displays are disruptive to the process. This new assignment, this change to my predictable routine, stresses me. There's a pattern shift, something important about this facility they don't want me to fully comprehend. Understood, I acknowledge. Clack 7 swivels and departs without another sound, leaving me to the hum of the translation unit and the weight of unspoken questions. The transport shuttle is cramped and utilitarian. I find myself crammed between labourers, men with calloused hands, and the dull resignation in their eyes that has become all too familiar. They eye my pristine translator unit with resentment and a kind of begrudging respect. I'm the bridge between them and their overlords, and that puts me in a strange, morally grey middle ground. The shuttle lurches, jostling us. A wave of low murmurs washes over me. I don't need the translation unit to understand the thread of fear and weariness woven into their muted words. "They say it's munitions," a man with a scarred face whispers, close enough for his breath to ghost over my ear. "Some new kind of weapon." "Shut your mouth," someone hisses in response. "Want the bugs to hear you." I close my eyes, feigning rest. I've learned that sometimes it's wiser to remain willfully ignorant. Yet, the seed of doubt has taken root. Munitions, weapons. The pieces of the puzzle are beginning to click into place, painting a picture I desperately wish to ignore, but once seen, it cannot be unseen. The transport shuttle shudders to a halt, and the heavy doors slide open with a pneumatic hiss. What greets me is not sunlight or the hazy smog of the industrial zone, but the clean interior of a vast subterranean facility. Banks of humming machinery extend in every direction, and the chemical scent of processed metal hangs in the air. The labourers file out silently, directed by Xylari overseers towards their assigned stations. Their movements are mechanical, practiced, a bleak ballet of forced production. My stomach churns. Whatever they're building here, the effort involved is immense, the scale of it staggering. Clack 7 leads me away from the main assembly floor, down a series of utilitarian corridors lined with reinforced blast doors. We pass laboratories, their interiors humming with the glow of strange energy fields. This level of security, the secrecy, it confirms my worst suspicions. Translator Unit 412 will observe and provide real-time analysis of labor output. Clack 7 informs me as we reach a sealed viewport overlooking a cavernous chamber. I peer through the reinforced glass, my breath catching in my throat. Below, a monstrous device is taking shape, serpentine and bristling with components I cannot readily identify. It strikes me more as an organism than any machine I've ever seen. Teams of workers scurry around the metallic behemoth, attaching conduits, tightening couplings, 1,000 minute tasks forming part of a horrifyingly vast whole. "What is this?" I ask, the tremor in my voice impossible to disguise. "Victory," Clack 7 replies, its compound eyes fixed on the activity below. There's a new tonal quality to its clicks, a smug certainty that sends a shiver down my spine. Understanding dawns with a nauseating certainty. These aren't munitions, not in the conventional sense. This is something far worse. A planet killer, perhaps, a weapon designed to break not just resistance but the very spirit of humanity. The knowledge burns within me, an unbearable weight. How long? I force myself to ask, needing to know the scope of the horror. 2 cycles, activation sequence will initiate upon completion. Cycles, weeks, days? The timeline blurs, a tightening noose around my neck. The room spins. I need to sit, need to steady myself. But the Xylar observes, ever vigilant. Weakness is a liability, a disruption they won't tolerate. I swallow bile and focus on the scene below. There, amidst the frantic swarm, I spot a familiar face. The scarred man from the transport. Our eyes meet for the briefest of seconds, and a spark passes between us. Not hope. That died as soon as I saw the monstrous machine, but a silent acknowledgement of shared dread. Perhaps he too sensed the shift in the air, the looming spectre of something irrevocably terrible. Could he be the key, a point of contact within the resistance, if such a thing still exists out there? The gamble makes my pulse quicken. Treason is punishable by oblivion, something the Xylar have made brutally clear from the start. But complicity, the idea of translating my own people into the tools of their ultimate destruction, is more than I can bear. Clack 7 issues a series of curt chirps, breaking my internal strategizing. Observation period complete. Translator unit will assess Stage 1 production metrics. With that, it turns and scuttles away, leaving me to wrestle with the demons of indecision. I follow the Xylari technician down a maze of access tunnels, my mind buzzing. Time has lost all meaning. It's measured in heartbeats, in the clammy sweat on my palms, in the increasing dread coiling around me like a serpent. I force myself to focus on my role. Every detail I gather, every nuance of the operation I translate is more data, more leverage I might be able to use. The production floor is a scene of controlled chaos, the rhythmic clang of machinery, the shouted directives of Xylari foremen, the muted groans of exhausted humans straining against their limits. My translator unit thrums in my hand, converting the chaos into neat columns of figures, efficiency reports, projected quotas. I've done this 1,000 times before, but today, every word feels like acid burning through my skin. The resistance, if it even exists, would need intel, schematics, timelines, anything that could give them an edge. I could risk it, attempt to smuggle out the raw data, but the surveillance is pervasive. Xylari sensors and drones patrol relentlessly, and anyone caught tampering with systems, well, let's just say disappearances aren't uncommon. Every plan, every thought seems to lead to a dead end. I'm trapped, a cog in a genocidal machine, and there may be no way to break free without shattering myself in the process. It's while observing a team of assemblers wiring intricate circuitry panels that I notice it, a subtle deviation. The scarred man is working with deliberate slowness, his fingers fumbling with a connection. It doesn't look like incompetence. It looks intentional. Sabotage. My heart leaps. Is he alone? Part of a coordinated network? Questions surge through me, but I can't risk overt communication. Not here. Not now. A Xylari foreman swoops down, mandibles clicking in fury. The scarred man is dragged away, shoved roughly towards a closed security door. Discipline. Or worse. I look away, forcing down the urge to intervene and focus on my translator unit. By the time Clack 7 returns to escort me out, I feel hollowed out. A husk of a person going through the motions. But under the facade of compliance, a seed of defiance has begun to sprout. Small, fragile, but undeniable. Back in the relative safety of my apartment, I collapse onto the narrow cot, exhaustion seeping into my bones like poison. Sleep offers no respite, only nightmares of the machine and the scarred man's defiant gaze as he was hauled away. He will be punished, interrogated, they will break him, and I did nothing. Shame burns, a bitter acid in my chest. I had a chance and I clung to my own miserable survival. What do I become if I remain silent, if I turn away from the suffering around me? A collaborator becomes a monster in their own right. The translator unit sits on my small desk, an inert lump of metal and circuitry that suddenly seems infused with menace. An idea forms, half crazed and born of desperation. The device is my link to the Xyla, but could it be a double-edged weapon? I pick it up. It feels heavier, somehow. My finger hovers over the activation key, then I press it with determination. The display comes to life, but instead of official communiques, I navigate to the raw comms data streams, unfiltered and unprocessed. Xyla communications are heavily encrypted, but I learned long ago how to slip through the back doors built into the system. They are efficient, yes, but also arrogant. It never occurred to them that their human translator could pose a threat. The chirps, clicks, and pulsed subsonics bombard me, a chaotic torrent of logistical updates, supply requisitions, and status reports. It takes hours, the monotony broken only by stabs of fear that I'll be detected. But eventually, I hit pay dirt. A stream of data marked High Priority Project Omega. There it is. The schematics for their doomsday weapon. The confirmation of its horrific purpose, the raw code that makes it function. I copy it all, every last damning scrap. It's not enough, not nearly, but it's a weapon of sorts. Knowledge is power, and the Xylar may have underestimated how desperately a cornered human will fight back. Now the hardest part, finding a way to transmit this to the resistance, if they exist. I close my eyes, trying to recall every whisper, every sideways glance in the labor lines. The scarred man is the only lead, but the Xylar will likely have him isolated. Reaching him now would be suicide. Another figure surfaces in my memory, a grizzled old laborer. Pavel, I think his name was. He moved slowly, hampered by an old injury, but his eyes held a quiet sharpness. Sometimes he paused his work and gazed thoughtfully up at the Xylari security drones. Was he observing, calculating, or was I merely projecting my own hopes upon him? I don't have answers, only the chilling knowledge that my life has been irrevocably changed. There is no neutral ground anymore. Inaction is complicity. The Xylar made me their translator. Now I must turn their own technology against them. Let them hear humanity's defiance, even if it's whispered through the tools of our own oppression. Days bleed into each other. I maintain the charade of the dutiful translator, going through the motions while my mind churns with clandestine plans. The stolen data burns a hole in my pocket. A compact data chip containing the seeds of the Xylar's downfall. If I can only find a way to use it, Pavel becomes my obsession. I observe his routines, the seemingly aimless pauses in his labor, the way his gaze flicks towards security blind spots. I begin to suspect that beneath his unassuming demeanor lies a mind far sharper than he lets on. But how to approach him without risking everything? Trust is a rare commodity in this world the Xylar have created, and a single wrong word could be my undoing. Routine becomes my shield. Clax 7 summons me for translation duties at irregular intervals, each trip to the facility an exercise in keeping my fear masked. My performance must be flawless lest they suspect anything is amiss. The workers look to me with pity and loathing, the traitor in their midst. One dreary afternoon, while overseeing a group of laborers assembling power conduits, Pavel falters. An unguarded moment, a tool slipping from his weakened grip. Normally, the repercussions would be swift and severe. Yet I move quickly, snatching up the tool before any of the hovering Xylari guards notice. "Clumsy laborer," I chide, handing the tool back to Pavel. "Focus on your work." My voice crackles with forced authority designed to placate the Xylari observer. Pavel catches my eye and inclines his head almost imperceptibly. It's a calculated risk on my part, but the message is clear. He sees me. The opportunity comes sooner than I anticipate. A few days later, a malfunction occurs in one of the assembly sectors, a burst coolant line throwing the schedule into chaos. I am called in to translate amidst the shouting and confusion. As the Xylar technicians scramble, I find myself close to Pavel, the din of the facility providing a modicum of cover. "The plans," I whisper so low it's barely audible. "Can you—" He doesn't react immediately, his face remaining stoic. Then, with deliberate slowness, he nods once. I force myself to look away, returning my focus to the frantic Xylar damage control efforts. The transmission must happen during a work shift, when Pavel would have unsupervised access to some form of terminal. It's a gamble. He could betray me at any moment. My every sense feels heightened to an unbearable degree. The whir of the apartment ventilation grates like the screech of metal on metal. The rhythmic beep of my chrono seems to hammer directly into my skull. Sleep eludes me. I am a coiled spring, waiting for the inevitable snap. When the summons from Clax 7 comes, I'm almost surprised. Part of me had expected the Xylari security drones to burst through my door in the night, retribution swift and merciless. Yet as I stumble into my uniform and splash cold water on my face, a strange clarity descends over me. I may not survive this, but at least I'll fall having fought back. My assignment today is back at the munitions facility. The scarred laborer is there, his face lined with exhaustion and resolve beneath the fresh bruises. If Pavel fails me, this man likely won't get a second chance. The thought sends a jolt of fear through me, but also hardens my resolve. The work is grueling, and the Xylari overseeing the labor force with heightened vigilance. They sense that something is out of alignment. I'm sure of it. With every translated order, every efficiency metric I relay, the weight of guilt presses down harder. Pavel works on an isolated station, assembling intricate wiring harnesses. Several times I catch him glancing furtively at an unattended terminal in a far corner of the assembly hall. My pulse quickens. This might be his chance, my chance, to strike back before the net closes around us. Clack 7 issues a series of orders, redirecting a group of technicians. Distraction. Maybe it's just heightened paranoia on my part, but the timing feels deliberate. I have to pass the chip to Pavel somehow. The translator unit thrums in my hand, and the data chip burns a hole in my pocket. Under the guise of clarifying an assembly directive, I approach Pavel's station. The Xylari technician assigned to the area turns its segmented body towards me, antennae twitching. "Laborer unit," I say curtly, injecting a note of manufactured annoyance into my voice. "The primary conduit harness is misaligned. Recalibrate to spec 0.5. As the Xyla focuses on the schematics I've projected, I slip a hand into my pocket, fingers closing around the data chip. In a move practiced under the cover of restless nights, I transfer it to Pavel during a feigned adjustment of his tool belt. Our hands brush for the briefest of moments. The contact is electrifying. He stiffens momentarily before inclining his head in acknowledgement. My heart pounds against my ribs like a trapped bird. I turn away, busying myself with translating a mind-numbing report about production quotas. My outward composure is a thin facade. The translator unit hums in my hand, each word I render into the Xylari's stark directives, a spike driven further into my soul. The data chip is out there, nestled in Pavel's grimy hands. The thought provides a perverse kind of satisfaction, enough to keep me steady as the day wears on. I notice a shift in the rhythm of the assembly floor. Xylari technicians cluster in hurried consultations, their chirps carrying a higher frequency than usual. An indication of confusion, possibly even alarm. Good. Let them scurry. Let them feel the sting of uncertainty for once. Word spreads quietly through the labor lines. Something in a data stream is out of place. Some unknown variable that has triggered a silent alert within the facility's network. I swallow a surge of fear mixed with adrenaline. They don't suspect direct sabotage yet, but they will. It's only a matter of time before they begin tracing the anomaly back to its source. Pavel is in imminent danger. The scarred man works nearby, his movements slow and deliberate, like every motion is a calculated risk. I want to warn him, to tell him to lie low, but I can't risk drawing further attention to myself. All I can do is watch, my gut twisted in knots as the Xylari net begins to tighten. A pair of security drones descend into the assembly bay. My breath hitches. They're usually reserved for major infractions, a clear signal of escalation. The drones hover, their sensor arrays sweeping the workforce. The laborers shrink back, the collective fear palpable, as the drones begin scanning each station meticulously. Pavel remains stoic, his hands continuing their repetitive wiring tasks as if unaware of the impending threat. The scarred man, however, casts me a glance. He's figured out that I'm the source of their troubles. He knows I've implicated them all. I meet his gaze unflinchingly, a silent plea for understanding. If I'm discovered, we're all doomed anyway. The security drones close in on Pavel's station. One of them emits a sharp, piercing chirp, a demand for him to cease his work and present himself for inspection. Time seems to slow to an unbearable crawl. I brace myself for the inevitable, for shouts and accusations, but what follows sends a shockwave through the assembly floor. The drones abruptly power down and retract. A collective gasp ripples through the gathered workers. A larger Xylari unit, its segmented plates gleaming with an almost oily sheen, scuttles into the area, followed by several technicians. I recognize it. A high-level troubleshooter, likely assigned directly from Central Command. Clack 7 issues several commands, its tone conveying a level of agitation I've never witnessed before. The technicians swarm Pavel's terminal, mandibles working furiously, their movements conveying a frantic urgency. I angle myself for a better view, my translator unit humming uselessly against my palm. The crisis, it seems, is more complex than I initially assumed. Perhaps Pavel did more than just transmit the data. Perhaps he found a way to actively disrupt something crucial. Whatever the case, for a brief, precious window, the immediate danger lessens. The Xylar may be precise and efficient, but even their systems hold vulnerabilities. And I, the traitor in their midst, might just be the one to exploit them. In the aftermath of the unexpected reprieve, the assembly floor descends into a state of muted chaos. Xylari technicians run diagnostics, their chirps and pulses growing increasingly strident as they're unable to isolate the fault. Security remains at a heightened state, scanning the workers with suspicion. It dawns on me, the act of sabotage, whatever Pavel did, has broken the illusion of total Xylari control. They are vulnerable, their perfect order disrupted in a way they don't fully comprehend. This is my opportunity. The scarred man approaches me under the pretext of needing clarification on a work order. I sense the others watching, their gazes shifting between us. "You did this," the scarred man murmurs, keeping his voice low enough to avoid detection. There's no accusation in his tone, rather a grudging respect. "Let's just say, I provided a spark," I reply, keeping my expression carefully neutral. "But it's the tinder that makes the fire." He understands immediately, his gaze sweeping across the assembly floor, lingering on the knots of workers pretending to focus on their tasks. The resistance, if it even exists in an organized form, is scattered, demoralized. A spark wasn't enough. They would need direction, a target. The knowledge of the doomsday weapon burns in my mind. If I could find a way to disseminate that, make the laborers understand the true stakes, the horror of what they're building, perhaps that despair could be turned into a defiant rage. But spreading that information is a death sentence, one I'm not sure I am ready for. "Get word to Pavel," I tell the scarred man. "I'll try to find a way to delay the Xylar, buy you time." My voice is barely a whisper now. But more importantly, there needs to be a plan. You all need to know what they're truly building here. He looks like he wants to argue, protest the danger, but something he sees in my eyes silences him. He nods and melts back into the crowd of laborers, his posture subtly straighter, as if a burden has been shared, not just given. Clack 7 approaches with several technicians, its antenna twitching impatiently. "Translator Unit 412, it chirps. "Analysis of the anomaly has proven inconclusive. Proceed with regular diagnostic protocols." The undercurrent of its tone is clear. Find the problem, restore order. This is no victory, merely a temporary setback for them. "As you command," I reply, clicking my heels in a mockery of military precision. The Xylari fall for the deception. It's my turn to exploit their arrogance. They cannot fathom that the answer to their malfunction might lie not in their intricate systems, but in the hearts of the humans they so readily underestimate. My newfound purpose drives me. I become a whirlwind of activity, translating repair orders, relaying efficiency metrics, all the while searching for some way, anyway, to leverage my access and sabotage the Xylar's monstrous project. They watch me with heightened scrutiny. That much is clear. My deception, so effective before, now carries a thin undercurrent of suspicion. One wrong move, and it will all come crashing down. The scarred man, I've learned his name is Yarrow, proves unexpectedly resourceful. Under the guise of maintenance tasks, he flits between sectors, his whispers carrying fragments of information that kindle a fire within the laborers. The scale of the weapon becomes common knowledge, the truth they can no longer ignore. I watch as their despair hardens into something else, a cold fury directed towards the oblivious Xylari overseers. Pavel remains a frustrating enigma. He gives no indication of his next move, only works his shift with quiet, relentless focus. I suspect he is playing a longer, more dangerous game, one far beyond my understanding. The knowledge brings a strange sort of comfort. We are pieces on a clandestine chessboard, each with a role to play. As the next cycle begins, the Xylari security protocols change. Laborers undergo invasive scans before and after shifts, their living quarters subject to random searches. Fear ripples through the facility, yet under it simmers the stubbornness of a cornered people. Clack 7 issues curt commands, demanding I focus on pinpointing the lingering fault in their systems. They suspect, I am certain of it, but without clear evidence they cannot act. Each translated schematic, every line of code, becomes a weapon in my hands. I plant seeds of error, subtle and insidious, misaligning timing sequences, obscuring critical tolerances. One night, as I am hunched over my translator unit, movement at my window catches my eye. My heart leaps into my throat. Security drone. I am caught. But the drone doesn't train its sensors on me. Instead, it drops a small, crudely fashioned package and darts back into the night. I hesitate, the weight of dread heavy upon me. It could be a trap, yet curiosity nags at me. With trembling hands, I retrieve the package and rip it open. Inside, under a hastily scrawled note from a friend, is a compact data drive. My hands shake as I plug it into my translator unit. It's filled with Xylari comms logs, security codes, troop deployments, a treasure trove ripped from the heart of their operations. Pavel. He's done the impossible. The full potential of the gamble I took becomes clear. He didn't just transmit the weapon schematics, he's been tearing the Xylari secrets apart from the inside out. Now, I have the weapons to turn their dominance against them. All that's left is to figure out how to use them. I spend my nights poring over the stolen data, painstakingly cross-referencing schematics against the access codes Pavel provided. The sheer volume of information is overwhelming, demonstrating his audacious infiltration of their systems. The Xylari, in their arrogance, never imagined their own tools could be used against them. Yet, knowledge without action is merely a sword left to rust. I begin to craft a plan, one born out of desperation and fueled by the resolve I see in the eyes of the laborers. They are ready to rise, but they need a target, a way to strike at the heart of the Xylari operation. That monstrous weapon, if I could disrupt its assembly, sabotage the core systems Pavel exposed, the ensuing chaos might provide enough cover for a mass exodus. Jarrow becomes my courier. I encode subtle instructions into the standard work assignments I relay, messages only he, with his newfound understanding of the project, would decipher. Assembly nodes to overload, conduits to miswire, crucial timing sequences to corrupt. My translator unit, once the key to our enslavement, becomes the catalyst for our rebellion. The Xylari sense the shift in the air, the unease growing like a bruise beneath the surface of their rigid routine. They double down on surveillance, their drones buzzing through the facility like a swarm of angry insects. Clack 7 summons me more frequently, its chirps laced with suspicion. I deflect and delay, feigning frustration at the stubbornly cryptic errors plaguing their systems. Translator Unit 412, you assured me these disruptions were isolated incidents. Clack 7 snaps, its segmented mandibles working in agitation. Production schedules are severely compromised. Regrettable, but the anomaly persists. I keep my tone level, projecting the image of a harried functionary doing his best under difficult circumstances. It will require a comprehensive diagnostic sweep of the core assembly systems. In truth, it's exactly what I want them to initiate, a process that offers direct access to the very heart of their precious weapon. As the Xylari technicians initiate their diagnostics, I feed Jarrow the information he needs. The timing is crucial. A single miscalculation and the plan will collapse, exposing us all. Each translated command feels like a step on a razor's edge. One wrong move, and the fall will be fatal. Then it begins. A tremor ripples through the facility, followed by panicked shouts and the shrill shriek of Xylari alarms. Chaos descends as sections of the assembly floor go dark, power conduits sparking and failing. In the ensuing confusion, I catch sight of Pavel and a handful of laborers moving swiftly through the shadows, sabotage tools glinting in their hands. The time has come for me to play my final, fatal move. My heart thunders against my ribs as I watch the carefully choreographed chaos unfold. I force myself to focus, to keep my hands steady on the translator unit that now crackles with urgent Xylari directives. The central system diagnostics are underway, providing a narrow window of opportunity before they isolate the problem. Translator Unit 412, Clack 7 scuttles across the assembly floor, its antennae broadcasting a high-pitched signal of distress. Override protocols are failing. Primary systems are collapsing. Its agitation is almost comical. The Xylari cannot comprehend that their downfall is being orchestrated from within through the very systems they rely on so absolutely. The fault? It's pervasive, I reply, injecting a calculated note of confusion into my voice. Critical core functions are being corrupted. My fingers dance across the translator unit's interface. I feed a series of catastrophic error codes into their diagnostic stream, fabricating a system-wide meltdown so profound it will force the Xylari to abort and focus on damage control. Every second I buy for Pavel and the saboteurs is precious. The facility begins to shudder. Warning lights flash with an angry crimson hue, casting a hellish glow across the scene. Screams erupt from the far end of the assembly hall near the weapon construct, followed by the sharp whine of failing energy fields. The climax is approaching. Taking a calculated risk, I address Clack 7 directly. The core assembly unit is in imminent danger of overload. I recommend immediate containment protocols to prevent a catastrophic. I cut myself off, feigning a gasp as my translator unit erupts in a shower of sparks, plunging the immediate area into darkness. My performance must be flawless, erasing any lingering suspicion they might have. I stumble backwards, crying out in a carefully staged display of fear and confusion. The Xylari for once mirror my bewildered state. Their rigid protocols cannot account for this level of total systems failure, the disintegration of their carefully constructed order. Through the gloom, I catch sight of Jarrow leading a group of laborers, sprinting towards an unguarded maintenance exit. The first wave of the exodus has begun. A surge of something akin to triumph floods over me, followed immediately by the crushing realization of what I must do next. Translator Unit 412! Clack 7 shrieks, its voice laced with a desperation that borders on the absurd. System integrity is compromised. Re-establish control. Initiate emergency lockdown protocols. I let out a strangled sob, a final act in my charade of the loyal servant overwhelmed by disaster. I raise a trembling hand and point directly at the weapon they labored to create. It's too late, I said, forcing anguish into my tone. It's going to detonate. The weapon thrums with energy, its metallic form vibrating with barely contained power. Panic seeps through me like poison, not because of my impending doom, but because I know that my lie might have condemned more than just myself. If the weapon doesn't overload, the Xylari will realize they were deceived, and their wrath will be merciless. Clack 7 recoils, its segmented body contorting in a silent shriek of horror. Emergency lighting casts distorted shadows, transforming the once sterile assembly hall into a nightmarish tableau. Laborers scramble through the gloom, their eyes filled with a feral desperation as they stampede towards any available exit. The Xylari drones, previously the enforcers of relentless order, have been thrown into disarray. Some frantically attempt to reassert control, their chirps and pulses useless against the wave of human defiance. Others emit piercing shrieks of alarm, mirroring the terror of their creators. Amidst the pandemonium, I make my escape. I am no hero, and this is no glorious charge towards freedom. I slip through the shadows, my translator uniform offering some semblance of anonymity in the swirling anarchy. My goal now is simple: survival. Blend in, find a way out, and pray the Xylari are too preoccupied to notice one missing cog in their collapsing machine. The facility shudders as the weapon begins to emit a harsh, discordant whine. Warning lights strobe at intervals, casting flashes of crimson that send my heart lurching in painful rhythm. I know this place will soon become an inferno, consuming everything in its path. Jarrow finds me amidst the throng of fleeing laborers, his scarred face illuminated in a stark flash of emergency lights. Relief surges through me. He made it out. "We have a way!" he gasps, tugging me through the press of bodies. "Underground tunnels, old maintenance network, Pavel." He doesn't need to explain further. Pavel, the quiet, unassuming labourer, he had foreseen the need for escape, mapped out a route beneath the very foundation of the Xylari compound. Outside, the world is bathed in an ominous twilight. Distant booms resonate from within the complex, followed by a blinding flash that momentarily sears the world with a harsh white glow. My ears ring and hot tears sting my eyes. We survived, we fought back. Perhaps it is not a victory, not yet, but it's a start. The years pass marked not by calendars but by scars, the weight of lives lost, battles won and narrowly survived. The war against the Xylari has become an ugly, grueling conflict waged across a scarred earth. I fight not as a translator, but as a soldier, the shattered remnants of my old life, a distant, bitter memory. Jaro stands beside me now, his scarred face creased with determination as he scans the ravaged landscape. The Xylari stronghold we scouted lies shattered before us, smoke curling from its metallic ruins. This victory was hard won, another inch of ground reclaimed at a terrible price. "Are you sure?" I ask, my voice rough with exhaustion. "This is it?" He nods, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Pavel's intel was solid. This was one of their last major production facilities. That machine, that abomination they built, it's over. The weight on my shoulders lifts, if only slightly. Their ability to replicate that planet-killing weapon is gone. It's a major turning point, but the end is far off. The Xylari still hold vast territories, their numbers formidable despite recent losses, yet something fundamental has shifted. They made the mistake of underestimating us, of treating us as mere tools for their conquest. Now that arrogance is being paid for in blood. We return to camp, a sprawling network of caves and reclaimed ruins that serve as our sanctuary. Pavel waits for us, standing tall despite the withered arm that serves as a permanent reminder of his brutal interrogation. There's iron in his eyes now, a hardness I hadn't seen in him all those years ago. "We intercepted a transmission," Pavel says, his voice low. "The main fleet, they're retreating, pulling back to their primary off-world outposts." A hush falls over the gathering. Warriors, hardened by endless conflict, look around at each other, disbelieving hope igniting in their eyes. They had begun to think the fight was eternal, the Xylari an immovable force of nature. Jaro breaks the silence, a laugh escaping his lips. "Turns out bugs can bleed after all." It spreads, the laughter, raucous, desperate, full of relief and tempered by the knowledge that many did not live to see this day. I find myself swept up in it, the sound washing over me, a balm to the open wounds on my soul. Later, as the celebration quiets, Pavel pulls me aside, a worn data drive clutched in his hand. "This started with you," he says. "You chose to fight when staying silent would have been easier." I look at the battered data drive, the very one that carried the doomsday weapons plans. It's a heavy thing for its small size. "Sometimes," I answer, meeting his gaze unflinchingly. "The most difficult choice is the only one we can live with." The path ahead is dark and uncertain. The Xylari, though wounded, are not defeated. They will regroup, adapt, and strike back with a vengeance. But for tonight, under a sky marred by old battle scars, there is a respite. We have survived, and within that survival lies the tenacious seed of hope. I am no longer just the translator. Along with countless others, I am part of the resistance. I am humanity that refuses to be extinguished.